What is up to all the difference makers out there? Man, I'm telling you what, these last 4 weeks have been... Grant, why didn't we turn the recording on? It's like we're just sitting and talking and talking and talking. So super excited to have another really cool episode. You know what's really, really cool? One, I have a guy in the studio today, and as my son has talked about his favorite coaches of all time in all of his sports, it's not, I guess, a coincidence that every single one of them have come from the years spent with this man in his organization, because it's not just one coach. It's being a leader of men and putting together the right people. And Jackson, out of all of his sports he's ever played, talks about those 2 years that he's had this man and his group of men that he's put together. But what's really, really awesome, and what we're going to talk about today, is he owns a company that has morphed through the years, morphed through COVID, and is really on the cutting edge of solving a big, big problem that's out there right now. And so I'm really excited to dive in with Brian Bastianelli. Brian, welcome to the studio.
Oh, thanks, Jason. I'm so glad to be here. Really appreciate it. It's an awesome show.
Ah, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. That's, it's so cool when people that I admire listen to my show and appreciate it. So I appreciate that.
Very much so. Thanks for the kind words.
Absolutely. So, man, we were kind of diving in deep and talking about a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about now. But first off, tell me your background, because one thing you said is the series of experiences that you've had through your life have led you to kind of this moment right now that's like perfect timing in all facets of your life. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, gladly. So I entered public safety pretty much right into adulthood. I went in the military for a while, U.S. Army, got out, and went to EMS and fire actually service. So I went into public safety, and I was a paramedic. I actually worked out here in Livingston County for a few years, and then worked for a couple private ambulances, and was a firefighter in Troy. And then right around 96, I put myself through the police academy, and I wanted to go law enforcement. And so I got my first job over in Grosse Pointe Woods, public safety, because a public safety officer does all three. They do police, fire, and EMS. Okay. So they're multi-skilled, and I already had all the certifications, so it was an easy hire. Back in the mid-90s, it was really hard to get a job in law enforcement. Unlike now, every police department is hiring. They're desperate for people. So I think I was there for about 2 years, and then ended up, because of coaching, met some new people, some parents who were nudging me to go out to Farmington Hills. So in 96, I joined the Farmington Hills Police Department. And so it was a big jump, because I was from the east side. I grew up on the east side. So I went way out to the west side. Didn't know any of the roads or anything. It was quite a jump. But I think there's like 300 applicants at the time. So it was hard to get a job. So I was able to get a job and in 96. And I stayed with Farmington Hills up until just this past July. So 25 years of service with Farmington Hills. And what a great place to work. I had great leadership. I learned from a lot of really good police command officers. And my career was kind of an interesting one, in that my career path took me from general patrol operations to training, and became a law enforcement trainer all through the late 90s, early 2000s, which is when a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now with the active shooter problem, that we're facing right now, which we'll come back to that, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I went into investigations. I worked narcotics. I was undercover for a number of years, assigned out to a task force, came back, became a police sergeant, and then started to run like a 911 center, and I was in charge of training. I was back in administration. And then the last part of my career, I was assigned out to as a supervisor for the DEA Detroit field office. I ran an enforcement group, which was really great. I had 11 great agents and officers, and we were doing some good work in the narcotics enforcement realm. So didn't want to leave, but it was time to go. Fortis Group, the company, had been ran part-time for the better part of 10 years, and it was time to. It was growing to a point where it was time to take it full throttle. So I retired, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, how do you do that? You think about like entrepreneurs that are listening in, and they think about having their hands full running a business in itself. How are you working not just a full-time job. It sounds like you're in these positions of leadership, making things happen. It's not like you're just going in and punching out and then going and running a business. How are you merging all of that?
Yeah, I don't even know. And then go ahead.
Plus coaching.
Yeah, sprinkling coaching there. I don't know how I did it actually. And, but you know, just like everybody, you know, you throw yourself into those causes and you seem to find that extra time and extra energy to make it happen. But it was interesting because, you know, we had started the business back in 2010. It was me and two other guys, law enforcement officers I worked with that all had the same training backgrounds. And we started the company because we saw a need for better training for law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And this was right around the same time that, you know, Columbine had happened, you know, and so there was other events that were occurring around the country at that time that was really causing a need for more security, better security training. So we ended up getting into consulting in the security space. And so between the training and consulting that we'd been doing for a number of years in law enforcement, we just transitioned a lot of that over to the private side. So we started this company originally just to work with our fellow law enforcement officers to improve their capabilities and abilities. Yeah. But then quickly realized that there was a need in the private sector. And so that's kind of how we transitioned there. But it was tough running a company and also having full-time job. Plus our backgrounds are in criminal justice. Like I have a degree in criminal justice administration. I don't have a business degree. I did not have a lot of business training or schooling. So trying to muddle through all of the complexities of not only starting the business, but then, you know, running it has been quite a journey in itself.
All the stuff you don't think about when you're going through the passion stuff, right?
Right, yeah. It's when that hobby turns into, you know, a real job, right? A real responsibility. So, and now it's even more so because now we've grown exponentially. And so, you know, you deal with a lot of those entrepreneurial issues as a business owner, you know, with hiring and, you know, managing your workforce and trying to meet the demands of the market, but in a time when that is pretty challenging, you know. So, you know, a lot of people have a lot of business owners have difficulty trying to, you know, keep their employees, you know. So there's that challenge too. But it's been an interesting journey, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So you talk about, and you're doing the consulting, and you said you first started off, and it's really training your fellow officers in those departments. And then you go to the private sector, but then COVID happens. Mm-hmm. And how does that disrupt that world? Yeah,
right. So COVID has disrupted everybody. We tried to use that time to kind of recreate. Everything just slowed down, which was not normal for me.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of time on my hands. So even in the law enforcement side of the business, that changed during that time period, just the way we did things, and everything slowed down because there just wasn't as much crime. There wasn't anybody moving. You know, you go on the street and there was not even a car in the street.
No movement. Yeah.
So I think at the time I was down at DEA. So how do you do surveillance on people that aren't leaving their houses, right? So it slowed down quite a bit. So I tried to take that time to say, okay, training consulting's been good. How do we grow the business now that I'm in a point in my career where I'm eyeballing the door for retirement? You know, how can I create Fortis to become more service oriented? And so we made the decision, it's a natural decision. A lot of retired police officers do this as they go get their private investigator license. So I ended up getting a corporate license through the state of Michigan, and we decided to build up a investigative division of the company. And that's when things really took off. So because we just started applying a lot of things that we learned along the way, and the experiences and skills. And then I brought along a lot of people that were retiring at the same time, all of my peers, my contemporaries, my friends, really, and brought them in. And we started just realizing we just have this incredible pool of talent and experience. And, you know, a lot of law enforcement officers, when they retire, they all want something different. Some want to just retire and, you know, be a greeter at a golf course, right? And not deal with stress or anything like that. Some just want to lay on a beach and not have to work again. Although a lot of times financially that's not the option. Some people want to go work full time again and apply some of their skills. So we create a model with the business at that time where no matter what that retired law enforcement officer, and I'll just say public safety official, really, so that applies to my fire and EMS, brothers and sisters as well. What can we create for them so that they can fit in one of those models? So that has worked really well because, again, we offer contingent work, part-time work, and full-time work, depending on what their personal needs are financially and what they want in their personal schedules. That model's working. So we're able to attract all that talent. And instead of losing that person that's like, look, I don't want to work full-time anymore.
Yeah.
We're not losing that unbelievable talent and experience, right? We're creating a home for them, and it's working. It's working really well. So what ended up happening with the investigative side is we started doing quite a bit of that stuff. You're working, doing like a lot of litigation support, things like that for law firms. We've done some background investigations for, pre-hire backgrounds, especially for sensitive positions. And that led us to doing a little bit of corporate work. And then next thing you know, we're starting to get a lot of protective service requests. And part of our license permits us to do, protective security type work. And so that demand really took off. And so we started doing a lot of executive protection and, escorting high value items, jewelers and people that are transporting money or any valuable goods, or they're just important themselves. And so
the person, they're important.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those of them out there, So we like to help fill that need, and so which then eventually led us to the schools.
So tell me, was it an idea? Did a school just call up? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So interestingly, we had gotten a referral to start basically watching over schools that were under construction.
Okay, yeah.
And there was vandalism and theft and things going on during the nighttime hours. So we ended up starting out just kind of watching those premises, and just keeping guard at night. And then Oxford happened. And that's when we started to get a lot of requests for extra security at the schools. And we started to really realize that we've known about the active assailant, the active shooter problem since going back to Columbine when we were training our law enforcement officers how to better respond and better deal with these situations, right? Both tactically and also logistically, equipment-wise planning and prevention, strategies that we would go out and talk to the schools and also businesses. So that was a lot of my responsibility when I was a supervisor up in administration, because part of my responsibility was community relations. So we would do a lot of emergency action planning with a lot of the businesses within Farmington Hills. Made a lot of visits to the companies there. A lot of companies are headquartered in Farmington Hills. So, of course, we're just honing our skills by doing that. Again, then applying that to private sector. So we worked closely with the school districts there in Farmington, the Farmington Public School District 2, obviously, as part of my role. And then here we are, 12 years later, and the need is still there. And now I'm in a better position to help in that I have a tremendous workforce of experienced people that care about the schools. They all have kids in schools, including myself, right? Yeah. And it was like all of the training and the consulting and the emergency action planning and all that experience that we gained through the years, not just with the business, but with our own personal careers, has led to us being positioned perfectly to assist. So the next thing you know, after Oxford, and Oxford directly impacted my family because we have family that go there, So it was really impactful.
It's so close to home.
It's so close to home for all of us, right, in this region. You always hear about these incidents, and you hear about that occur around the country, and it hurts you, right? It makes you really sad, but when it happens in your backyard, that sadness turns into fear, where you're like, oh my gosh, if that could happen in Oxford, that can happen at my child's school,
Yep.
you know? And so there was obviously a large outcry by the communities to their school districts saying, we need more. What we're doing now is not enough. And so that's when you started to see some action within the school districts to look at different approaches. And it's a big jump to go from having hall monitors
Yeah.
to somebody that's actually carrying a firearm in the school. That's a big jump for educators, you know.
Yeah.
And so I feel for them because they have the challenge of trying to keep their schools safe, but not to the point where school's starting to feel like
A military lockdown, or
right,
yeah,
or a prison, right?
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance, right? Because you want to maintain the sanctity of the learning environment and make sure it's as healthy as possible, right? So the learning can progress without that fear. And there's a ton of strategies that we can talk about, the different things that have evolved through the years and stuff like that. But going back to kind of like the story was like everything led us to like this point where timing wise, like in my life, I retired. So I have a single focus now instead of having split focus. I have a tremendous workforce of people of my peers and people that I've worked with along all these years that are coming along on this journey and taking up the cause. And I like to say that, you know, in many ways, in many respects, we're changing the security model, the standard security model. We're doing it differently, especially when it comes to schools.
And that's what I saw, and that's what I just saw from that video clip. And then knowing you, but then watching that video clip, it's like, it's different. It's changing the game. It's like, I want to talk about this because it's not the, you know, just the campus security guard or the campus, you know, parking lot monitor, or you hear people say, oh, should the police have guns, or should just random teachers have guns? But you're talking about bringing in people that are experienced, are trained, are, you know, not only just on how to use the gun, but how to read situations.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's a lot of those different philosophies of how to tackle this problem get discussed, and there's the pros and cons for everything, right? You know, and to talk about some of those is it's kind of interesting. So you have I've heard it. Well, look, we need to put a sworn police officer in every school in the state. And would that be the absolute optimal situation? Yes, absolutely, would be optimal.
Yeah.
Because they're on duty, they have full arrest powers. They're obviously active and current and all that. But when you start to do the math on that, the cost to the taxpayer, it's exponential. And so there's a high cost there. And secondarily, you have the difficulties of hiring.
Yeah.
All right. So most departments are having a hard time just fulfilling their ranks in order to put police cars on the road.
Yeah.
You know, I speak to chiefs all the time. A lot of my friends are in the executive leadership still that haven't retired yet, and they struggle to hire. Heck, my former agency is, and these are some of the finest agencies in terms of pay and benefits and everything you could possibly offer, right? A new police candidate, and they're having a hard time hiring, you know? So how do you...
And you're talking about the best, so how does a lower performing town, city...
Yeah, just financially or the things that are attractive to new police recruits, right?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is they're having difficulty just filling their shifts on patrol. How could we possibly hire enough to now put into, say, 5 to 10 or 12 buildings within a jurisdiction? It's pretty impossible. And that, I know, one of the school districts that we recently were contracted with, that was one of the things that they were discussing. But I think everybody kind of came to that realization that that's not possible. And so with Fortis Group, kind of coming in and saying, well, hey, hang on a second. So if you can't have a full-time police officer that's active duty at each school, then why not put a retired police officer or public safety official or military veteran or somebody that has those skill sets into these buildings at half the cost, right? So now you're kind of answering some of the costs. It's still costs, right? You're still adding basically personnel. The superintendent has to figure out where that money's going to come from and how. And it's still significant because it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of it's a lot of personnel that you're bringing on third party. So it's not like the school districts have, even the bigger school districts have just extra money laying around to hire, 10, 12 more people, right? I mean, they need teachers. So, they have to fill those educator ranks, so, so it's a challenge. So we, understanding that, we try to, at least with Fortis, we try to come in and make it financially palatable to achieve that higher level of security. So that kind of offsets the debate about having an active duty law enforcement versus like just a third party security vendor. Mm-hmm. Then there was the discussions of, well, why don't we just arm the teachers? Or why don't we just hire our own security people and arm them? Well, what's interesting about that is it's a good idea. You have more control, right? They're your own personnel. They're your own people. But the problem is most school districts, they lack the ability or the experience or the knowledge or the expertise to train, to equip, to continue training, maintain some sort of qualification standard with the firearm. And
we're just trying to get them to teach. Right.
Right. Let's just teach.
There's like those pieces of just teaching.
Right. So you add all of that. And even if you were just to bring in, say, hire a security person just for the school district, and there's some districts that do effectively utilize this approach. I can think of several in our area. But you have to have definitely the right people. And so, as far as leadership goes to oversee that, because at some point you're going to have to train them. You're going to have to qualify them, and God forbid if something were to happen, they're going to have to basically justify or be able to demonstrate that their training standards were up to standard, up to a modern required standard. Yeah. And so, and that takes me back to our training consulting, because we do that, right? We've done that, and so. If a school district were to come to us that have their own armed security, well, and they would say, well, can you come in and train our people? Can you qualify them? Yes, we can.
That's what you do.
So we were able to do that. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And so school districts that decide to go that route, we can stand next to them and help them in that requirement. And we're able to testify as subject matter experts if our training or their training programs that we designed for them or ran for them ever came into question. We've had the ability to defend that, right? Legally. So, but a lot of districts don't necessarily want to do that because the problem then is, okay, well, what kind of guns? How do they carry the guns? What do we do for identification? Yeah. How do the police know that these are our people that are armed in our schools? There's all these questions, right, that come into play. And, educators, superintendents generally are former teachers and principals, and their careers they're experts at education. At education, yeah. Right? And so, we come in and we have that expertise in protection, and we have that expertise in firearms training because we've been doing it for 20 years. We have that expertise in the equipment, and we bring that to the table to answer that. I had a reporter one time when we got the contract for the district on the east side. A reporter asked me, he said, well, there was brought up that, why don't we just arm the teachers in there? And I said, well, look, you're talking about giving guns to educators who are classically trained to teach children. I said, but you have retired police officers here that for 20 plus years did nothing but protect their communities and are classically trained to be a protector, right? A law enforcement officer. It would be like asking, one of my retired police officers to teach algebra. just sub in and teach algebra. Good luck with that. I couldn't do that. Heck, most law enforcement officers go into police work because they couldn't do math in the first place, including myself. I don't want to offend my friends out there, but no, I will say that for myself. I wasn't good at math, so I went into law enforcement. I wasn't an accountant, but the guys that want to go into law enforcement are good at math usually go to the IRS. Just saying.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of like it's like apples and oranges. So answering those different approaches, I'm not trying to stand here and say that having a third party vendor like Fortis Group to come in and provide that service is the answer. I think every district's a little bit different. Yeah. You do have districts that do that in house and they're doing it successfully. You have districts in house that are still struggling with what to do, and you have some blended approaches as well. So, almost every community has some sort of school resource officer, right? We always know them as Officer Joe, right? Or whoever that officer is. Those SROs are experts and put in those places because they are great with juveniles. They understand juvenile law. They have that specialized training of the education, that learning environment, and they are that liaison between the school district and the local police department that's providing that service. That's not a free service. The school district pays for that. Yeah. It's not free. They're contracting that local police department or sheriff's office to provide that position or positions, depending how big the school district is. But even then, most of the time, at least in our area here, that model, those SROs are generally assigned to the high school, which is usually the biggest school, right, out of all the schools in the district, or high schools if they have multiple. And then they will rotate or be responsible for like the middle schools or the elementary schools that feed that high school. So they will generally make their rounds, during the school week. Maybe they're going to different schools and visiting, but at some point they're leaving those schools, right? So it's difficult for that SRO to not only protect all those schools at once, right, but then also deal with all of the law enforcement juvenile law issues that arise throughout the week, right? Just the things that happen in schools, in terms of,
the whirlwind of things that happen on
all the tons of things that can possibly happen. So, this approach with what we're trying to do is we're simply just trying to be a resource for the school resource officer. And so we help to liaison with these schools that they can't be at all the time. Yep. And we turn to them if there's anything that goes above the need for just pure protection. If it's investigative type issues, we let the SRO know. And we also keep the SRO informed on what's going on if there's any problems at the school. So
it's like plugging in as part of the team.
Just part of the team, yeah. And so far that approach has been good. And again, kind of going back to what we talked about, this whole different approach, I think it is a different approach. We have to have the right people in those schools, right? Not every retired public safety official is meant to work in a school, right? You just can't say, oh yeah, yes, you have a lot of experience, but you're terrible with kids. Right?
You should not be around kids.
You should not be around kids. We try to hire on people not only just with that tremendous amount of experience of being able to work in crisis, to have the immense amount of training that's already been paid for by the taxpayer. Yeah. Right? Yeah. They've already been trained by us, the taxpayer. Yep. So why not continue to utilize the training that we've already paid for? Yeah. Right? Just makes sense. But then make sure that they have the right personality, the right fit for the schools. And so that just goes into our vetting process. Yeah. And, so when we select, people to come work for Fortis Group, we just don't select them just based on their experience. We hire them based on their personality first. We want to make sure that they have the ability and the capability to utilize deadly force if they had to in that the most horrible crisis event they could possibly be in. We need to make sure they have those abilities to operate in crisis. Yeah. Right. But they have to be personable and friendly and love kids and plug into the faculty. We want them to create relationships. And that's what I mean by we kind of do like, we're kind of redefining that security model, and that most security approaches would be like this. This location needs security. Okay. And we need them from, this date to this date.
Yeah.
During these hours. And so the old security model would be like, okay, here's our pool of people, plug them in, right? And just plug them in through those dates and times to make sure that we have all that covered for the client. We're not doing that. So what we're doing is, especially with our schools, but even some of our corporate clients, we're not rotating people. We try to find people that want to stay and want to create those relationships, right? They want to be there long enough to create those relationships. And so we're putting those people there permanently throughout the school year or throughout the term of the contract.
Yep.
That we have. So those relationships can be established, because that is more important than anything in the schools, is to have that extra person that's alongside the faculty, that's acting as a positive male or female role model, right, to the kids, and really keeping their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the school while the principal's busy running the school and dealing with the day-to-day issues. Yep. These teachers are busy teaching their classes, and it just gives them an extra pair of eyes and ears throughout the school day, to head off any problems that might be developing. And that's just secondarily to the fact that, they're there to make sure that building is secure from the time it starts to the time it finishes, and then beyond. Once the children have all left the school and are off with their parents, then it's time for them to come, to punch out and go home. They're there to protect the sanctity of that school, the security. So a lot of the responsibilities are typical security type function. They patrol, they make sure that there's no propped open doors. There's no vulnerabilities, in terms of even facilities, right? You have a door that's not closing properly, or you have a window that's not closing properly, or, they're pointing out those things to the principal so that they can be maintained properly and repaired, so that that's no longer a vulnerability. So whenever I talk to superintendents, I want them to understand that isn't there. Yes, they're armed. Yes, they're there to deter any type of ideation of active shooter intentions at that school, right, or that facility. Yes, they're there if that person ever does come to do that heinous act, right? They're there to slow them down or to stop them, period.
Yep.
But in the unlikely chance of that happening, and let's be realistic when we talk about ratios, right? If it happens, it's catastrophic. Yeah. And it sends a ripple effect for the next 10 years in that community and beyond. Yep. Which we're seeing and still feeling, right, with Oxford.
You still see it in Columbine.
And Columbine.
You still see it all the way back to then. We talked about that being the beginning, but you still see that impact from then.
Right. Yeah, I think they said there's been probably, 50 or 60 active shooter events that can be attributed, that had some sort of similarity or tie to what happened in Columbine in terms of how it was done or how they were dressed or how they carried out the act, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic of talking about active shooter, the problem itself. But going back to the school, so, they're there not just to protect and be that deterrent, but to be part of that faculty and to be that principal's right-hand person when it comes to safety and security issues, because you may have one of our people there that have worked 25 years in law enforcement, and they were a juvenile. Not only were they a juvenile detective, they were a command officer that ran a detective bureau.
Yeah.
So there's this tremendous amount of knowledge and experience that they can tap.
Nobody else in that building is going to see.
Right.
They don't see it from that lens.
Right. Exactly. And so they're there to be a resource throughout the day.
The word that keeps popping up to me is proactive, because, like you said, the odds that there's going to be a shooting in that school are very low. If it happens, it's catastrophic. But they're along the route making sure proactively that things aren't happening, that there's no weakness, and that, preventing that from happening to where they don't have to pull their gun out and use deadly force.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario. They're prepared to
Right.
do it if they have to.
Right.
But nobody wants that to happen.
Right. Right. And there's obviously a lot of effort going on now to take those proactive approaches, not just in terms of upgrading the security posture, both in terms of facility upgrades and utilizing modern technology, evolving technology such as AI and things like that in scanning systems and things that are looking for weapons and things. There's so much interesting things going on right now in that industry.
Yeah.
In the application of those new technologies in school districts, so that they're not obtrusive or invasive. Right. No, the worst thing I know that a principal or superintendent would ever want is metal detectors at their front doors, and then somebody searching students. Right. Nobody wants that. Nobody. Not the parents don't want that.
Like you said,
nobody wants
now
that.
they're checking in for prison for the day. And,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Nobody. So bottom line, what's best for the students? Well, but if a student walking through new technology where it's a portal and there's nothing going on other than this camera that's scanning backpacks and things like that has the AI, the intelligence to basically say that bulge or that looks like that could be potentially a weapon or some sort of a detection device. Heck, even just the use of canines, so we've started to luckily grab onto people that were retired canine handlers, and they still have their dogs, or they're still active in dog training, and they have the explosive detection dogs. They can detect gunpowder. And so these dogs now, not only do they come in and they are like therapy dogs because they're cross-trained, right? They're there for friendliness and therapy, but they also can smell gunpowder, right? Or so.
That's so awesome, that cross-training.
Yeah. So that's an interesting area too, because, there's just so many new approaches, not just from technology to facility upgrading. Look, how many schools, when we went to school, right?
Yeah.
You just walk into school.
Yeah.
Any door.
Yeah.
During school hours, right? So procedures have changed a lot, right? So now you're down to that single point entry access during the school day. Then they're like, well, that's good, but we've had problems where active shooters have been able to break through the front door of the glass or shoot through the glass. So how do we add added protection? So that's when you started to see, okay, we have an answer for that. We add the glass breaking film, right, to prevent the glass from breaking easier. Now there's even ballistic film that you can put on same way that will even prevent bullets from passing through, right? Wow. Just regular glass. And so you have all these really neat products that are coming out to kind of answer that need. And then you have the AI technology with the cameras. And so you still have that upgraded security, but without that feeling that the kids are going into somewhere to be locked down, you know? And nobody wants that. That's not good for the learning environment. So there's a lot of really neat things happening. It's pretty cool to be a part of it. And we're more of the human element of it, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it's there's not a lot of standards. There's not a lot of standards. We're trying to do our very best to create positive standards and positive processes and protocols. And some of our competitive companies are trying to do the same, because a lot of these companies that are providing these types of services, we're not the only ones, are people with very similar backgrounds as mine.
Yeah.
So I do think that a lot of them are operating on the old security model when we're trying to operating on a new model. And we'll see where that goes.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
A few things. One, this is like kind of like the common thread of all the episodes. I remember 86. This is episode 86, but it comes down to like successful entrepreneurs. It comes down to solving a problem, seeing problems and solving them. And what's cool about your story is you found a problem originally within the training of other police forces like yourself, and you stepped in that. But then there was another problem that shifted your business, and then there was another problem that shifted your business, and you just kind of allowed the business to shift and change, seeing these problems. And that's really, really awesome. I think so many people can learn from that. Two, and you said it, is taking those collection of experiences, because so many of us, like, why did we do this? We had this experience, this work experience, and yours is pretty applicable in what you're doing and what you're doing now as a business. But so many times we do these things in our jobs and we don't know why. Why did I spend this 5 years doing this thing? And then it's cool when it comes all back around for something like this and it all ties together.
You're so right. You're so right. It is interesting. Everybody goes through that process, right?
Yeah.
You wonder why you went through this career path, or something completely jettisoned you off into a different direction, and you don't know why at the time.
Yeah.
But then when you get a little bit older and you're a little bit wiser, you start to look back on that journey and all the changes and all the forks in the road, and things start to make sense.
Makes sense a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to apply that currently now with the problems that we face with violence in our, in our societies, we're just protecting. We're just doing it in a different role now.
Yeah.
We're not being paid by the taxpayer.
Well, let me ask you this, because I picture this, like, I would picture having a lot more fun, maybe, like having a little bit different passion from doing something like this versus maybe like after I retire and doing something like this versus maybe even the police work that I did. I feel like maybe there'd be like more of a sense of purpose around it, or I don't know. I just tell me, what is your experience around the guys that you have on your team?
Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right. Yeah. Most of the people that we do bring on, they feel also like it was a calling. Many of them were called to action after Oxford too, just like I was. They're like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be, how can I utilize my skills to help?
Yeah.
But there's not there at the time, especially, there's not a lot of school districts that were doing this, and there still aren't. There still aren't.
Yeah.
It's still relatively.
You're pioneering out there.
Yeah. It's in this area for sure. Other states, they may be ahead of us in that realm, but Michigan, this is relatively new. And, I've always asked myself, why is it that we don't see active shooter events occur as frequently in, let's just say the inner city, right? Inner city school districts.
Yeah.
All right, where we know statistically, these are generally areas that are prone to violence, right?
Yep.
Or high crime.
People are carrying
or high
guns,
violent,
right?
Yeah, high crime, high violent areas in some of these inner cities. And there was one answer to that, and that is the fact that they have armed security at their schools, or the police department actually provides it. Like Detroit, for example, they have the Detroit public schools have their own police force. So that's why. So why does it happen in these more rural areas, or these more
because nobody expects it to.
Right. I think a little bit has been a little bit of complacency, like it'll never happen here, right? I think that they are attractive as targets because there's not a lot of security measures in place. And look, you can put every security thing in place, and these things can still happen. That's why there is a lot of effort going towards behavioral identification, like precursors that I know the FBI has worked real well in putting out information from their their criminal behavioral units. They have that knowledge, that experience to create kind of profiles of potential active assailants, right? If they display these certain different behaviors. Yeah. So there is, and some of it's good, some of it may not be as strong, but I think if you put it all together and you're like, yeah, this is definitely a red flag, right? A lot of boxes are being checked here with this person or this individual, whether it's in the business space, the corporate world, or if it's in the student body world, right? The kids. So there's a lot of effort going towards monitoring, some of those, some of those pre-assault or pre-attack indicators. Now, most experts are all going to agree when I say this is that these active shooter events, these mass killing incidents, these are not spur of the moment. Mm-hmm. They're not just spontaneous. There is weeks, months sometimes of preparation before something like this happens. And in many of these cases we've learned through the investigators, through the investigations, and the information put out to the public is that almost always somebody knew that this was going to happen. And it could have been prevented if it would only been reported. That's why, the state of Michigan put forth the OK to Say program, right? So you can anonymously report things to get to the proper, through the proper channels to authorities so they can take action before something catastrophic occurs, right, in the community. So there's a lot of really good programs that have evolved over the years. So much has evolved since Columbine, not just in terms of the way law enforcement responds, but also the way school districts have improved their security postures, understood their vulnerabilities, and put into place as many layers of security as you can, right? That's the key, is having layers of security so that if they get through the first layer, at least there's warning that something's happening, right? The first layer being maybe understanding that this person was a potential vulnerable to carrying out this type of horrible act, right? That pre-identification. If it gets through that, if it gets missed there, okay, then maybe somebody who knows this person can report it through the OK Do Say program or similar type of reporting programs, or people, just a general messaging
an avenue and a process,
right? Just the messaging, whether it's a corporate messaging from your business, from your HR to all the way down. Hey, look, it's okay to report these things. To having those avenues through school counselors and other anonymous programs too, through the schools. And then if they get through that layer, right, it doesn't get reported, then is there that outer layer of protection at the school, whether it's the monitoring of the school grounds, the fencing, or the restricted access or certain specific areas of the park, right? You have that layer of the outer layer. Yeah. And if they get through that outer layer, that's somebody missed the red flag that the active shooter was pulling in, right, and unloading with a rifle, right? Right. Or 2 rifles or whatever. Like, here's the bag of explosives and here's the weapons. That should get caught by some sort of camera system, right, that's scanning the outer school grounds, right? Then that gives pre-warning for the school to lock down, right? And you get all those quick actions taking place. That saves lives flat out. Let's say that gets missed, all right, and they get to the door. Well, then you have all those upgraded physical security measures, like the man traps and the protective films on the glass, and making sure that all the doors are locked, right, and closed. That's a big one. A lot of doors get propped open. I know a lot of schools are promoting stop the prop campaigns to keep students and teachers and to remind them not to prop doors open. And it happens all the time, right? You have gym school, you prop the door open, or the teacher props the door open because it's hot in the classroom or whatever. And understanding that every time they do that, that's a vulnerability, because if somebody has that intention that day to do that, they've already done the pre-surveillance. They know that the gym door gets propped open every day at a certain period of time, or these doors open up, or all of these students are in the lunchroom at this time, or this cafeteria or this auditorium, where they're all congregated in a very small confined space, which, they do their pre-surveillance. They know when they're going to attack. They plan it out. So, so making sure that all those doors are closed all the time during the school, and having like somebody like a Fortis Group, school safety officer doing that, making sure, and just being that double check to make sure that that's happening, but if they get past that, do we have the measures in place to stop them if they end up actually getting into the building? Do you have something that can stop them? There's the run, hide, fight model, the Alice model, all these training models to mobilize people to take action if they cannot escape, right? If they can't completely just self-evacuate and get out and away. Yeah. That's the best option no matter what. If they can't get out, then to be able to barricade themselves safely, right? That goes into the hide part, right? And then the fight part is if they make entry, to be emboldened to know that if you attack as a group, you have a higher probability of survival. Yeah. So, you have those Alice training programs that are occurring, those active shooter, response trainings that are occurring in corporate world, school districts, and so it's an ongoing process of education, training, right? So you have those, and then bottom line is you're not going to stop that attacker if they're armed unless you have a group effort to do that, or you have somebody there on site that is armed that can also deal with it, right? So a lot of school districts that are still utilizing unarmed security personnel and calling them security is not effective. It's the best that they're going to do is be part of the faculty in trying to shelter children or get them out of the way, or take bullets for a child, right? That's all they're going to be able to do. They have no tools to stop that type of threat. Right. Colonel Grossman, who's very, very instrumental in the training world. And, there's a lot of other trainers and people out there and consultants and experts in these fields. And, they will all say that you can't, to stop a bad man with a gun, you need a good man with a gun, and it really boils down to that simple saying,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's kind of a little bit about all that.
That's super cool.
So we could talk for hours about this.
Oh, so that's awesome. Another thing I keep thinking about is how you talked about now kind of bringing your brothers in having that element.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I over the years, most entrepreneurs are going to tell you that partnerships don't work. I was advised by people I trust and respect when I formed partnership to say, look, partnerships generally don't work. So always have an out clause, be prepared, and, they were right. And so, not for anything else other than, it was time to separate from partners. So, over the years, I was able to, continue the Fortis mission. I had great partners that started the company. They're really good guys, trainers like myself, went on to have very prosperous law enforcement careers and beyond. And, but it was time to separate. It's just at the time, and so, I was able to buy them out. And then it was during the COVID times, is when I started to get this vision of adding this whole division, and I couldn't do it by myself, right? I was still working full time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do that. So everybody's, I have two other brothers that are in law enforcement. One is a lieutenant. Well, they're both lieutenants actually right now. They're still working. And, I have another brother that lives out in California. He's an electrician and he owns his own business. He is the ultimate entrepreneur, right? He's a guy that left Michigan with not a nickel in his pocket, went to California and started learning the electrical trade. And now he's got a successful business that's just rocking, right? I mean, just doing so well. So we take a lot of direction. We call him the smart brother. My brother Kevin, we learn a lot from him in terms of business and money making and money decisions and things like that. He's really our compass, our family compass. But my other two brothers have the same backgrounds as me, and they're local. And so right around that COVID time, I will tell you that there's going through some personal, some family issues and things like that. It was a very trying time for me. And actually during the COVID prior to, I actually has considered to fold the tent up actually, and just close the business. Just like I couldn't do it. I was by myself and I was dealing with a lot of issues and personal issues and family issues. And, my brothers kind of came to my side and said, no, this is a good thing. You've worked hard. You've been doing this for like 9 years, 10 years, we'll help you. So they were in a place in their life and in their careers also to be able to do that. So they jumped in with me, and now I have my two brothers at my side helping me grow this thing, right? And it's been a blessing. It's a lot of fun. I'll tell you. How
awesome is that?
It's great. Yeah, Thanksgiving was interesting. Christmas will be interesting too. Well, it's almost one of those things like, guys. It's Thanksgiving. We're not talking about business. We're not talking about work. We're not talking about anything. Let's just enjoy each other.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it is kind of hard to shut it off, especially all of us are the same. We're all very, very alpha, very loud, Italian, very, it gets loud. But it's a blessing having them by my side. They have just tremendous skill sets, both of them, and we have similar backgrounds. And it's been a blessing, really, over all these years because the three of us have all been in law enforcement. So we've been able to share stories and cry on each other's shoulders and go through some of the hard times and the things we've had to deal with in our careers. We all three of us have been in officer involved shootings. We've all gone through loss of partners and people we work with. And, it's nice to have them. So to continue now on together in this mission is just
It's
amazing.
really cool to be able to go through and have a shared experience like that with not just, you obviously have your buddies and your friends and coworkers and everything, but to have literal brothers that have known you your whole life, be able to go through that experience is really cool.
It is. It's lucky. And my sister-in-law too, she's a deputy, so she's in law enforcement as well. So there's four of us talking police work during the holidays, and then my brother Kevin yelling at us because we're not, we're not watching our margins close enough, So it's pretty fun, but yeah.
It's a cool family element.
It is. They're truly blessed, actually. Yeah, it's great. I will say, all of us have this family we have this family feel about us, right? Our brothers. We have a lot of people that have friends that have said, I'm so jealous you guys have this, right? I don't have a brother that does the same thing. I can't relate, or, my sister doesn't, we just don't get along, or, like our parents really raised us, we're Italian. My dad was Italian, so we raised a very tight family, right? Most of that's part of the culture. And you either love each other hard or you fight each other hard. One of the two. We've done it all. So, but, we've taken that feel and we've applied it to the business. So, our clients feel like we care about them, and we do. I mean, we genuinely care, and we show that. We don't have a problem showing our emotions. Yeah. So, we show that care and concern, not just on a business level, but a personal level. And then our people in the same way, big part of leadership, as you've had a lot of guests on here talk about it, taking care of your people. Yeah. Right. Yep. You have to take care of the people that work for you, whether they're subordinates, or they're your peers. Now that I'm running a business, I'm not running a drug crew anymore, but I've got a crew of people, and I care about every one of them. Everybody we hire, we treat as family, and that is so crucial. I think businesses that fail, you can chalk that up to one of the reasons why they fail, or why they can't get a workforce. Yep.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot of businesses have done some pretty amazing new approaches to that, right? To show their employees that they care. And it's not always money. It's not always a monetary thing. You can give raises. Right. It's not. You're right. It's more than that. Right.
Yep.
And so I will say that a lot of our success right now and going forward is going to continue with that approach with people. We treat our employees as family, and they feel it, and it's great. It feels good.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the best way to really sum it up. And you look at a lot of different companies, whether they're successful or not. And you talked about there's a lot of other competitors out there in your market, a lot of the companies trying to do the same thing. But there's very few companies that do that personal touch, that are really the difference makers out there. And you kind of really bring it back to that. You talked about family. We either love hard or we argue hard. But at the end of the day, you still love each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that's even in business, whether it's with your clients or with your people, you love hard. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have disagreements. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be tough conversations we need to have. But at the end of the day, this is all set out of love, right? At the end of the day, I want what's best for you. You want what's best for me. We want what's best for the greater good.
Amen. Amen.
Right. And if more like, and again, this is, I watched that little commercial, and it was like, oh, I need to get you on here, because I know just from knowing you that this has got to tie into it, right? That this is all the family, the personability, the coaching, the leadership, all that tying in. You talk about when you talk about your job experiences, I led this, and it comes down to all those experiences that brought you into this moment right now.
Absolutely. Right. Again, not necessarily classically trained, in business, but applying the things we've learned along the way, from whether it's military service or public service, right? In the end, we've been serving our communities, our citizens that we served, right? When we were sworn, law enforcement, we served. And so I just take that approach of service to our primary business approach, just caring and being that provider that understands a problem, comes up with a solution.
Yes.
And then executes it flawlessly, right? We have to be perfect every day in what we do. You have to be perfect every day. So when it comes to the safety of others, you have to be perfect every day. So we stress that. So,
man, brother, thanks so much for coming down here and sharing how you're making a difference in the world, how you're making a difference in people's lives, not just schools, but you look at all the retired officers, all the, these people, what do I do next? And you're bringing passion and purpose back into their lives, and also then protecting our most valuable assets, our kids.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you.
Absolutely.